Hello and welcome back to the Led Zeppelin Iceberg. Today we'll be going over part 2 of the iceberg, which consists of the Presidents and Monty Python tiers, as you can see in the image on your screens right now. Now here, we start diving a bit deeper into the band and finding out some more obscure topics. With that said, let's get right into the video with the Presidents tier. This refers to the song Achilles' Last Stand, the most well-known song off the album Presents, the namesake for this tier. It isn't played as often on the radio as songs like Kashmir or Stairway to Heaven, however, due to it being a rather long song, clocking in nearly 10.5 minutes long. Many fans of the band argue that it is one of the best songs the band ever made and one of the finest songs Jimmy Page ever composed. The title, which is never actually mentioned in the lyrics of the song, is a joke made by Robert Plant himself, referring to serious leg and foot injuries he sustained in his car accident in Greece in 1975. Which led to plans for other tours in 1975 to be shelved after the band played the shows at Earl's Court in London. This refers to a very annoying typo many people make when referring to Immigrant Song. No, people, Immigrant Song does not have the word "the" in the title, and it never, ever has. Now this refers to the odd object that the family is seen staring at on the cover of Presents. The black obelisk-shaped object that Led Zeppelin featured on the cover and the inside sleeve of the album was intended to represent the force and presence of the group. Presence, of course, being the namesake of the album itself. In 1976, their label SWAN Records actually produced 1,000 replicas of the object to be used as 12-inch numbered promotional statues. These replica statues often fetch a hefty price at auctions today due to their rarity, with one selling for $2,000 on eBay in 2013. Now the object itself is made from a white gypsum cement called hydrocal, and is shaped in a rather odd and particular way, giving it a very unique look. Now this refers to the compilation album released 2 years after the band's breakup in 1980 following the death of John Bonham. This album is a compilation of unused tracks from recording sessions by the band. This name was chosen because a coda is a passage that ends a musical piece. Since this was released after the band's time together as an active group, this title was chosen for this effect. Perhaps the most well-known song on the coda is Hey Hey What Can I Do, which until then had only been released as the B-side of Immigrant Song in areas where Led Zeppelin released singles, meaning that the UK did not hear the song until over 12 years later. It is in fact the only non-album track the band ever released before their 1980 breakup, having been left off Led Zeppelin 3 for unknown reasons. SWAN Records was a record company set up by Led Zeppelin right before the release of their double album, Physical Graffiti. It was overseen by Led Zeppelin's manager, Peter Grant, and was a vehicle for the band to promote its own products as well as sign artists who found it difficult to win contracts with other major labels. The decision to launch the label came after Led Zeppelin's 5-year contract with Atlantic Records expired at the end of 1973, although Atlantic still distributed the label's products. After the band broke up, it continued on and distributed the solo works of Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, as well as other artists. These other artists included Bad Company, The Pretty Things, Dave Edmunds, Mirabai, Maggie Bell's, Detective, and Sad Cafe. The recording label also partly funded film projects such as Monty Python and The Holy Grail in 1975. Sadly, however, SWAN Song ceased active operations in 1983 and now exists only to reissue previously released material. Now this refers to a drumming technique by John Bonham that was famously used on many well-known Led Zeppelin songs. In fact, the very first song released by the band, Good Times, Bad Times off of Led Zeppelin 1, heavily features this now famous technique. Alright, with that out of the way, we have the Monty Python tier to go to. KARAG Plant was the second child of Robert Plant and his wife Maureen Plant, born in 1972. He lived a relatively normal childhood, aside from injuries he sustained in the 1975 car wreck that severely injured his father, where he miraculously managed to get away from with only minor injuries. However, sadly, his young life was cut short when in 1977 he suddenly became incredibly ill while the band was on tour in the US to promote their album Presents. After leaving Oakland, California, on board the planes The Caesar's Chariot, drummer John Bonham, tour manager Richard Cole, and Robert Plant headed to New Orleans for Led Zeppelin's concert at the Louisiana Superdome, the site of their next show. The governor of Louisiana at the time was also planning on awarding them with the titles of honorary colonels of the state. Within hours of arriving and checking in at the Maison du Puy Hotel, Robert received a call from his wife Maureen at the family's farmhouse near Kidderminster, Worcestershire. The first phone call said his son was sick, and the next 2 hours later, she informed Robert that KARAG had passed away. Earlier, KARAG had fallen ill and been ordered to bed by the family doctor, but his condition deteriorated. Maureen called the ambulance, but he failed to respond to treatment and died on the way to Kidderminster General Hospital on Tuesday, July 26, 1977. Needless to say, Robert Plant was horrified, and the rest of the tour was quickly cancelled. An autopsy held on Monday, August 1st, 1977, revealed that KARAG had died from natural causes. Only a week earlier, Carmen Plant, his daughter who had been born a few years prior and was mentioned in the song The Ocean, had become ill with stomach enteritis, which may have been the same virus that affected KARAG to a much more severe degree. Robert Plant almost quit Led Zeppelin and music altogether due to the grief of KARAG's death, and considered becoming a school teacher, which was one of his original ideas for a career before Led Zeppelin took off in 1968. He was in fact accepted for training before a pep talk from John Bonham inspired him to continue making music. Even after John's own death in 1980 and subsequent breakup of Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant took his words to heart and continues to make music as a solo artist to this day. As seen in the image for this tier, and as mentioned earlier, Led Zeppelin assisted the Monty Python comedy troupe with their film Monty Python and the Holy Grail in 1975, alongside music contemporaries Pink Floyd and Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. Led Zeppelin contributed £31,500, Pink Floyd music pony up £21,000, and Jethro Tull frontman Ian Anderson put in £6,300 of his own money. Adjusted for inflation, that means that Led Zeppelin's 1974 investment was equal to almost £336,000 in today's money, Pink Floyd's is almost £224,000, and Anderson's is worth approximately £67,000. This was not the only time the British rock stars helped fund the group's film endeavors. In 1979, due to controversy over the film's setting and story potentially being blasphemous, Monty Python had a hard time securing funding for The Life of Brian until George Harrison of the Beatles arranged financing for Life of Brian through the formation of his company Handmade Films. In 1975, Jimmy Page began to use heroin while on tour in North America, and used it more and more in larger amounts over time. Jimmy Page was regularly shooting up heroin, and it negatively affected his performance on stage in 1977. He had lost a lot of weight and began to erratically and incorrectly play songs on stage. One particular concert in Tempe, Arizona is infamous among fans for being the worst Led Zeppelin concert ever performed due to both Jimmy Page's terrible musicianship, screwing up the rest of the band, as well as Robert Plant's vocal problems at the time on the tour, with Achilles' Last Stand in particular sounding objectively awful. During the sessions for In Through the Outdoor, Jimmy Page was so deep in drug addiction that he barely contributed to production and songwriting for the album. However, John Bonham's death from alcoholism, as well as the negative press surrounding him, would inspire Jimmy Page to finally seek help and kick his heroin addiction by 1984, followed by his cocaine habit soon after. He has used neither drug since. As mentioned above, Robert Plant was seriously injured in a car crash while vacationing in Greece in August of 1975, which would force the band to cancel plans to tour further after the North American tour, followed by the run of shows in Earl's Court earlier in the year. As mentioned before, his children lucked out and only suffered minor injuries, but his injuries were serious, and his wife Maureen was almost killed. Now confined to a wheelchair, Robert wrote many of the songs featured in Presents, including the famous Achilles' Last Stand, which was about his time spent while unable to walk, as well as a trip to Africa he had once taken with Jimmy Page. The title itself references the Achilles tendon of the heel, which Robert injured during the accident. Due to his injuries, the band would not be able to tour to promote Presents until 1977, a year after the album's release. The band would also bring back the famous acoustic section of their concerts, which he had originally retired in early 1973 to give Robert Plant a rest for his legs, debuting the Battle of Evermore in a live setting for the first time, albeit without Sandy Denny. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant recorded and toured in the mid-1990s under the title Page and Plant. The pair reunited in 1994, and after recording a live acoustic album, they embarked on a world tour. They then recorded a second full studio album of original songs, followed by another world tour, before disbanding at the end of 1998 to promote other solo projects. They later briefly united in 2001 for the Montreux Jazz Festival. The initial plans for the reunion were made in 1993, with discussions between the two of collaborating emerging from casual small talk and then an invitation to perform an MTV Unplugged. Music producer Bill Curbishley, who had been managing Robert since the 1980s and who assumed management of Jimmy in 1994, was integral in reuniting of Page and Plant. Despite failed attempts by others to reunite the pair, Curbishley was able to persuade the previously reluctant Robert into working with Jimmy again. The two played a mix of Led Zeppelin songs, solo songs, and new songs in their highly successful tour. One song that was absent, however, was Stairway to Heaven, due to Robert being sick of the song, though the two did perform an abridged acoustic version of the song in Japan once in 1995. Despite what some would suggest, this was not a reunion of Led Zeppelin, however, as John Paul Jones was not present. In fact, John Paul was not even told about the reunion by his former bandmates. He later commented he was unhappy about Page and Plant naming their first live album after No Quarter, a Led Zeppelin song that he was mostly responsible for. The last entry in this part of the iceberg refers to the way John Bonham died. The day he died, John drank 40 shots of vodka, including 16 shots of the incredibly alcoholic drink during his breakfast alone, in just 12 hours. The reason for this was due to how deep he was into his alcoholism. John had only eaten a couple of ham and salad rolls during the day and had fish and chips or a pie while at Jimmy's house, which was another factor as to why he vomited in his sleep, causing him to suffocate to death. It was said that it was often difficult to tell when John was drunk due to how frequently he drank. And with that, part 2 of the video is done. Thank you guys for tuning in. Part 3 should be out sometime in the future when I complete the script for it. Also, the script for Story of Ghosts Episode 8 is also complete, and that'll also be out very shortly. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good day. Stay tuned for more icebergs. Not all icebergs I do will be music related. I may do some more icebergs about other topics I do, like anime. Like, I'm also into some different anime, and I found a couple interesting icebergs about some anime series I watch. But one iceberg I will be doing as well is the Pink Floyd iceberg at some point. So yeah, expect those kind of icebergs from me in the near future, as well as other videos, as well as, again, the Story of Ghost. With that said, have a good day, and see you soon.